there's this unexplored thing where we can get into a co-creative relationship with clients and come up with something that we couldn't if we didn't allow for a different force to come through and we weren't open to listening in a deeper, more intuitive way. I'm all about sovereignty and freedom. Those are my values, and those are the values that I instill in my clients, and that the journey of financial freedom is all about personal sovereignty, giving yourself permission, self-authorizing, and that it's about having all the choice in the world and not being at the effect of someone else defining your experience, your financial well-being, and who you want to be and how you want to express. And I believe that women over 50, especially entrepreneurs, really deserve to be brought into the fullness of who they want to be. And money just can't be the obstacle to that anymore.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority, and here we are with another amazing episode, and I'm so excited for the next guest. I'm actually going to have my co-host, Wendy Page Sterling, introduce our next guest. Wendy?
Yes. Julie, welcome.
Thank you.
Julie Steelman is the income acceleration coach for heart-centered female entrepreneurs over 50. Having retired financially free from corporate America at the age of 47 after generating over $100 million in sales, she's now on a mission to empower women to turn their passionate gifts into a thriving business. With a master's degree in spiritual psychology and certification as a feminine power coach, Julie offers a proven formula for women ready to make great money and turn their soul work into lifelong income. Julie, so wonderful to meet you. I am so excited for us to get into this conversation. And the first thing that comes to mind after reading your amazing resume here is so many women that I also encounter get so afraid the older we get that either our money's going to run out or we have to stay where we are because we think that if we make a shift, income is going to go down. So what are some of the challenges, or, what are some of the most common phrases or fears that you hear from your potential clients around hitting 50 and thinking about dipping their toes into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's such a great question. One of the reasons that I really focus on women over 50 is because we grew up in an era where our mothers were expected to have kids in a white picket fence and nothing else. And if they did, they were labeled. And there was a big association around money, not able to ask for money, can't have your own money. And that money at that time anyway was programmed as you had to be in a marriage to have money.
Right.
And so women were never empowered financially in that particular generation. And because I'm in that generation, I feel very called to serve that, because they didn't grow up with financial literacy. They didn't grow up being saleswomen, yet they carry these incredible gifts. They're the wisdom keepers of our time. They're the voices of our time who hold the keys to the future we all really want to live into. And I feel deeply passionate about them being catalyzed into being the change agents that we need in the world. And the biggest obstacle is money. And the biggest obstacle to money isn't really a money thing. It's really a self-trust thing. And that self-trust thing comes from the imposition of society in that generation at that time, where you're supposed to stay quiet and silent. You're not supposed to stand up. You're not supposed to take a stand for anything. And so, a lot of what I hear are things like, I'm going to be a broke bag lady, or I would rather be revered for my femininity than seen as aggressive. And that there's this misidentification around money that in making money makes you aggressive, or what I call it's the kryptonite to the feminine. And so then they don't get to be spiritual and whole. They think they have to twist themselves into these kind of people that they really don't want to be. And so there's a lot of shadow work and a lot to unpack. But I really believe these are the women that have what we need to help us foster the world we really crave to live in.
Yeah, I always find that I feel like people use their age as an excuse to not do something.
For sure.
And what I love about what you just said is that it's actually a reason to do something. It is a reason to really dive in and be a leader and to really explore what is possible, because at the end of the day, and your age is just a number.
Yeah. In 2023, Forbes published an article about women over 50 were the new entrepreneurial economical superpower. And so let's unleash that, right? And there's a particular way those women are and want to work, and that because we live longer, we're very motivated to contribute. There's a body of work that's left undone if we don't actually get it out into the world. And there's an incredible amount of dissatisfaction. And whether they're divorced or spouse has died or kids are have their own lives, a lot of them are single women relying it on as their primary source of income. And they want to be a viable factor in the world. And they're going to live another 20, 30, 40 years. What are they going to do with that time? They don't want to sit around.
So as a feminine power coach, how do you help women tap into their feminine energy and intuition to drive their business success?
That's such a great question. I love that you asked that. I think some of the gifts of the feminine are that we're generative and creative and intuitive and can stay really tapped in. And I believe in balancing the masculine and the feminine, because the masculine is how we get things done and how we take action in structures and systems. But we need to bring some of that feminine wisdom. And so tapping into that is really doing more of the deeper soul work. And that's where I bring in my spiritual psychology tools to really look at how do you create the conditions to become a co-creative force in the world and with what you're working with and who you're working with. And there's a way to listen to the field of your clients, like specifically who you're called to work with and what is it that they're wanting and they're needing. And there's a different way of being in relationship with that in a more human-oriented way and honoring that humanity. And a lot of women want to work with other women. And so there's a different kind of listening to that versus I just need to monetize this and I need to make money on that. There's this other part of the income piece costs them money, but the bigger cost is not being in that feedback loop that you're making a difference, that something that you're doing is enhancing and changing someone's life. When they're not in that feedback loop, they really doubt who they are and why they're here. And so my encouragement is to get them in that as quickly as possible, because that knowing, that inner wisdom and that lived experience starts to make a whole lot of sense about how you can actually help and serve other people. And then monetizing it, because now you've got a methodology, you've got a path that you can take people on, becomes so much easier.
That's amazing. What are some of the tools that you use to bring that out?
Yeah, that's such a great question. We could spend the whole time talking about that.
That's true.
You know, a lot of it is that it's a really, the biggest thing, honestly, is being in sisterhood and being edified and having people feed back to you what you said makes sense. I want what you just said. I'm struggling with this, because I think one of the reasons I was so successful in corporate America is because I was one of the few women at that time that was even in the sales organization. And my clients were household brands. And there's an ability to be in the relational field and listen really differently and listen, I love men. I'm not slamming men in any way, shape, or form. There's just a different skill set in the ability to actually hear what's not being said and actually bring that to the forefront versus always being really factual. And that there's just this innate wisdom. And so some of those tools, you know, are really about talking things through, deeper inner dialogues, the typical spiritual, you know, things like meditation and all that. But majority of the work that I get done with my women is in sisterhood, is in workshopping things, is being in a collective where it's safe to say what's bothering you and what's challenging you and where the hard edges are, and working through it as a group is what I see where the biggest transformation
Oh,
happens.
that's fantastic.
I feel like you and I have very similar
Yeah.
backgrounds because
We just figured that out.
We did. And having, I worked for 20 years in corporate, worked in ad sales, numbers driven, very masculine.
Okay, we have to check our past out because we may have crossed paths.
I know. That's what I'm like, are you coming to dinner tonight? But, coming out of corporate, I think, it's really, and I would love your opinion on this. I was very masculine dominant, as a lot of us women feel like we have to be entering into corporate. And when I became an entrepreneur at the age of 41, all of a sudden, this feminine energy thing appeared to me. And it was such a foreign concept, but I feel like the feminine is what is missing in corporate. And it's not as readily either accessible or accepted. And I'm curious what you have seen, or maybe share an example of a client who has experienced almost like an awakening. I feel like once you discover the power in your feminine, this awakening happens within female entrepreneurs, male, I'm sure as well. And I'm just curious what you have seen as the result on the other side, and sort of like these aha moments that have come out of women transitioning from corporate into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I actually will tell a little bit of my own story.
Sure.
And I was working for Microsoft. I was at MSN. We were launching the internet, and I was the LA sales manager. And we were in a big executive meeting, 400 people, blah, blah, blah. The mucky mucks from Microsoft were all there. And Sanjay, the VP, pops a slide up and says, "We're going to decide who gets deleted." Those were his words. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Deleted? And like my gut
Deleted?
was like, deleted.
Wow.
Collectively.
Collectively.
Yeah, wow.
Translation, if you're a manager, you're going to decide who on your team was going to get fired.
Dang.
And in that moment, I was
Wow.
like, everybody became a line item on a spreadsheet. They weren't human anymore.
Yep.
They weren't people anymore. They didn't have kids or jobs, or mortgages or have bills, right? They were just like, well, were you productive? Were you not productive? And it was just like, whoa. And it was everything I could do to stay in that meeting. And I ran out, ugly cry, mascara running down the face. I got into my Mercedes, driving down the beach, lived at the beach, had all the money, the toys, and the accolades. My fancy suit felt like a straitjacket. And I went, I can't do this. And I went on a trip, and I went scuba diving to Turks and Caicos. And on the last day of that trip, the dive master says, "You need to get back in the water, put your fins and mask on. There's something you need to see." And the moon was rising and the sun was setting. These aquamarine blue rays were shining in the water. And it just was like, I was in tears. I swam around the bow of the boat, and there were 4 wild bottlenose dolphins, a male and 3 females.
Oh.
And they engaged in this most extraordinary mating ballet. To this day, I've never seen footage of what I saw. The females cradled each other while he mated with them. And in that moment, 2 things happened. One was I could never be in the world without a camera again. And so I do a lot of wildlife photography. And the second is that I felt that wild, free, feminine surge that you were talking about, that fierce feminine. And I was like, no one owns me. And so when I got on the plane to fly back home, I made a decision. A, I was going to get on an exit strategy and get out. And B, I was going to change the way I did business as a corporate person, as if all my clients were my own clients in my own entrepreneurial business. I stopped listening to what the bros were telling me and the way the bros wanted it to go down. Remember, I'm referencing a period of time.
Sure.
Right? That there was a way you're supposed to do it.
Sure.
And I went, nope, we're going down the fierce feminine path. I'm on an exit strategy. And I started listening to my own wisdom. And I started crushing it. I was increasing my revenue 30% by 30% by 30% every quarter, as well as my commissions. And I realized I was onto something, that I needed to master income generation from the inside out. It wasn't on anyone else's terms. And no matter where I went, or if I had my own business, that I was the talent and that no one owned me. And so the birth of that, I don't want to work for anyone else anymore. And that energy of that wild instinct, that fierce feminine, that I could sit with Apple, I could sit with Toyota, I could sit with Sony and listen to them about their business problems and be like, and start to get creative downloads that weren't your typical answers. I started totally blowing up their businesses. I was on all of Apple's NDAs and launching all the products that you use now. And it was extraordinary. And so, what's on the other side of that, and for men as well, right? To open up to, there's this deeper rooted inner wisdom, intelligence, intuition that doesn't get appreciated. In the corporate environment, that's a particular type of habitat. I think it's trying to evolve and become more resonant, but I don't know. I'm not in it, nor could you. Unless there's 8 zeros, we're not going to talk.
Couldn't agree more.
No. But it's really that there's this unexplored thing where we can get into a co-creative relationship with clients and come up with something that we couldn't if we didn't allow for a different force to come through and we weren't open to listening in a deeper, more intuitive way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely. So deep and insightful.
Right.
My goodness.
So
But
much
yes.
so.
Well, since you're, on the path
Yeah.
now, that you've shifted your whole everything
Yeah.
in that to be more focused on soul-driven business owners
Yeah.
and businesses. Have you seen like key elements of like a successful sales system for
Yeah.
those that you work with now?
Yeah. I've come up, what I learned through what I did in corporate when I switched and I started using, it was, I'm the entrepreneur. I'm not working for a job. And I switched my mindset to no one owns me and I'm going to become the mistress of my own income generation. Was that there was this method and formula that started to unfold about a way to show up, and that when you bring your passion and your talent and your self-belief in, something whole other else extraordinary can happen. And so I take my clients through that, and we really bring their values into what their niche is. That the niche is really values-based versus this specific thing that is just this little teeny problem that you solve. There's this whole other...
They say the riches is in the niches.
That's right. The riches and niches, and what is it? Fortune in the follow-up.
Yeah.
All those things. But that women, because of lack of self-trust, they think money's the problem, but the income barrier is self-trust. And so I work with them on, they have credentials, lived experience, certifications, trainings coming out their eyeballs. And it's like, you don't need another one. What we need to do is take everything that you've synthesized and we turn it into a system. I call it a signature system for your soul work that sells, because it proves to them they have a methodology. And when they can see the value, then they can sell the value. And then a client can see the pathway to getting the result they want with that particular person. And all of a sudden getting to yes is a whole lot easier.
Have you seen a lot of more transformation in the side of women's confidence in their sales going through this
100%.
formula?
Yeah, when I first came out of corporate, I wasn't going to work, but all my girlfriends are like, "No, you did what? You have to teach me how'd you do that?" And it's like, no, I can't work on your confidence. I have to actually sneak up on you in these other ways. And so when I sneak up on them around, we're going to put your system together, all of a sudden the light bulbs go on. And instead of like, I think you're wasting your time.
Do you have an example or a story of someone that you've worked with?
Yeah.
That like you could walk us through kind of how they've transformed?
Yeah. So one of my clients, Gabriella, she would cancel all of her enrollment calls. And she had tons of people around her because she hated them and was terrified.
Wow.
And we unpacked it. And there were two things. One is she thought she was going to be a broke bag lady. Like, it's in her world, it doesn't even make sense. That's what she's thinking. But the other piece of it was, she said, I feel like I'm asking for money and I don't know what I'm selling and it feels out of integrity and I don't like it. Okay, we can work with that. And so she has a extraordinary love system. And we started putting the pieces together and putting the steps together of what that looked like and what were the phases in that journey and where did people start and where could they end up. If they actually went on the journey and took the wisdom, they could be here. And so, it was from dating to engaged to the love of your life was the journey she was taking people on. And after that, she started getting back on those calls. She made $250,000 in 2 weeks. And it's because we could never work on her confidence. She had to prove to herself that she had something that was worth asking $50,000 for. And so it changed her life. I could text her right now and she'd be like, oh yeah, she'd unpack it for 30 minutes. And there's ways that we have to work with ourselves. You can't go at self-trust head on, right? It's not going to work because all the stuff that has you not self-trust is going to come in your face. So I found that these ways of really packaging wisdom and gifts into methodology cures so many of the feminine ailments around making money.
Basically releasing the blockage or
Yeah.
busting through those glass ceilings that aren't really there.
When you're sitting on a methodology, you can't really say to yourself anymore, I'm not worthy.
Unless you're Garth.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Oh, Garth.
Wayne and Garth.
Wayne and Garth.
Yes,
I'm not
yeah.
worthy.
I'm not worthy.
Oh, yes, yes.
I was like, back in the
Wayne's
80s, 90s.
Yeah.
You just dated us.
She did.
No, I need myself. No.
I mean, my whole thing goes back to Mutual Almost Wild Kingdoms, where it all started with a little kid with a remote, because I had 3 older brothers, and they're like, nope, you have to get up. I take that back. There was no remote. You had to get up and change the channel. For the millennials, sorry,
For
you
the
wouldn't know
dial?
what that
No.
was. Yeah. There was no voice remotes. Let's get it clear. And you got steps in while you walked over to the TV.
And there was no Fitbit around at
No,
the
there's
time.
no.
You got no credit.
No credit. No, we got no credit other than getting not hassled by your brothers. But it was that moment of like, I need to go to Africa before I die. And then I looked around and like, these people will never pay for me or let me go to Africa. I have to have my own money.
Well, you
And
just
that's
got
when it
back from
started.
Africa
I
too,
did.
right? You brought a bunch of people with you?
I did.
Was it like a retreat or was it an experience or?
It was, it was a group of people. We're going to do some serious sacred safaris, but yeah.
That's cool.
I took them on, this was my 17th time, and
Wow.
we curated a very specific trip, and they are all still grinning ear to ear, trip of a lifetime. And my buddy Exaud, who's been my driver in Tanzania for 16 years, and I have it dialed in, and it was my bucket list. And I want every person to have more than enough money so the bucket list can be reality, for the being of service can be reality, and that money stress isn't your driving force.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How rewarding is it for you when you see someone make this transformation?
Yeah.
Client you just talked about, going from
Yeah.
struggling, feeling bad about themselves, and then it clicks.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Just, forget about the financial rewards.
Yeah.
Like, as a person, seeing someone achieve something like that.
Can we just whoop, we have a guy in the room. I love it. I love it. He's
Sorry,
sitting here with the chick panel. It's awesome.
No, it's great to have it.
Yeah. That's a great question, because there's nothing like seeing someone light up and shift before your eyes. And all I can do is be a channel with what I've learned and I know, to try to ask the right question, to try to hold space for somebody to see themselves differently, to reorient at the level of self-identity. And there aren't words for I'm going to start crying now, how moving it is when somebody really shifts into their power and out of victimhood and out of lack and that scarcity mindset into they know themselves as richly abundant and that all of the resources on the planet are fairly available to them too. And it's magic. That's why I say, income's the problem that gets them in the door. The thing to solve is they need to be in that feedback loop, because that's the way there's a lot of talk about impact and there's a lot of pressure about contribution. And people hear that as a global thing. And it's kind of it's a big thing, right? But what if there's a 10 acres that you can make a difference and you can see that you're making the difference? You don't have to talk yourself into that you think you're making the difference or that you think what you're saying is making a difference. But you watch a client's face change. You watch the room shift. You watch people move into power. You watch people never go back to an old way of thinking. You witness a defining moment. It's there's nothing I'm not a mom. I'm assuming moms or dads know what that feels like with your kids. It's kind of that same thing. It's like giving birth. You're just yeah, she's never going to go back to that again. Did that answer your question?
That's great. Yes.
It's like giving birth. I wouldn't know either.
No, I would not.
I wouldn't
Neither
know
would
either.
I.
I've done it twice. So
Well, let's hope
You
you,
get
don't know.
the
Yeah.
gold.
do not.
Are you a dad?
I am a dad. I have 2 kids, and I respect anyone who's gone through it.
Yeah. You're
I was there for
thank God,
support.
not me.
Yeah.
yes.
Like we give a lot of entrepreneurial births, so we can be pregnant for 24 months and our water's broken for 12 months.
Yes. It kind of feels the same. Not gonna lie. Although, well, different but the same.
I was to say, we're sitting in the Wynn Resort, right? We're in this really cool studio and there's people outside walking by and
they're taking photos.
And they're staring at us, so we have on headphones and microphones. But do you know that Wynn Resorts used to be one of my clients?
That's
and
awesome.
we
mentioned that.
Yeah, we ran some of their very first online ad campaigns. And I'm going to tell a little secret. They were the ones, I was working for an ad serving technology company at the time. They were the ones that came to us and said, came down from Steve Wynn. I want to tell you what we're going to do. You're going to program our ads. The first time the ad runs, they get a room for $39. The second time that ad runs, it's $59. The third time that ad runs, it's $139. And so they created this whole algorithm that now runs the entire hospitality industry. We built the code for that. And I'm sorry, everybody.
Wow.
But when you go online to book an airline ticket and you don't quite buy it and you come back and the price goes up, that's where it started. And so it's like all these memories when I walked in here came flooding back of going up the spa elevator up because their offices are up that elevator. And it's kind of wild, to be here and remember that day. Yeah.
Good story. I love that.
That's a fun fact about you.
Yeah. What other fun facts do you have over here?
Oh my God. I spent 90
What
days.
other secrets do you know?
I spent 90 days walking with 9 wild cheetahs and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
That's so cool.
You have photos?
I do. And videos. Yeah. I just want to say the wildlife thing because I really blend wildlife wisdom with money medicine, especially for women, because nature's taught me so much. The optimal blueprints for how to thrive are already in nature. We don't need to reinvent anything. And the animals have taught me a lot about how you thrive in different habitats and how you pivot. And so it's just a very deep, heartfelt thing for me. So that moment when I got catalyzed by dolphins that you're never going to be without a camera again is why we're here.
Can I ask a question? I don't know how we are on time, but something just popped in my head that I wanted to ask you.
That final
Yeah.
Oh, I got you, girl. Okay. So thinking about, you're in Africa. I that is on my bucket list.
You're coming with me.
I know. I literally was like, maybe she'll take me.
I just signed up.
I just signed up. You didn't know. But what I was thinking is you have been to Africa. You observe animals in the wild in their natural habitat. And, so much of the work you do is really instilling in entrepreneurs, in women, what financial freedom looks like. And I feel like you have a very different perspective. So I'm actually very curious to know what your definition of financial freedom is.
I love that you asked that question. And thank you for bringing that home because I'm all about sovereignty and freedom. Those are my values. And those are the values that I instill in my clients. And that the journey of financial freedom is all about personal sovereignty, giving yourself permission, authorizing, I can never say that right, and that it's about having all the choice in the world and not being at the effect of someone else defining your experience, your financial well-being, and who you want to be and how you want to express. And the wild is 100% my freedom. It's my core value. And I believe that women over 50, especially entrepreneurs, really deserve to be brought into the fullness of who they want to be. And money just can't be the obstacle to that anymore.
Beautiful.
Did that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
That was a mic drop of the conversation.
That's an Instagram quote right there.
Right there.
A few of them.
Oh, well, that was awesome. Amazing. It's like a best soundbite for your show. For this show, like all shows. Well, I appreciate you just coming out here today. Like I've just enjoyed just listening to the story. Everything about you is incredible, Julie. And I appreciate you being here today. And for those of you that are like interested in this and that they're, even like the women that are out there, they're just starting their entrepreneurial journey over 50 or later in life, like how would they get in touch with you to connect with you? Or even those that are like, I want to go to Africa with you.
It's all interconnected.
There you go.
Because it's like the big thing is you can't separate your multi-passions. I tried doing that. And It was like, I call it my double life. It was epic, but it wasn't sexy. And they can find me, Julie Steelman, pretty much anywhere. It's on LinkedIn, it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's my website, juliesteelman.com or juliesteelmanphotography.com. But either way, everything's all linked together. And I would love to know you and know who you are and help you birth your work into the world.
And you have a great podcast as well that people can tune into. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a podcast called The Prosperous Feminine. And a friend of mine gave it to me out of a conversation, and people are flocking to it. And I think it's because the assumption of the feminine being prosperous has never been heard before. And so we have a new affirmation in the world. And it's very much about for entrepreneurs over 50 to be super successful, money, wealth, prosperity, revenue, sales, all of it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you. This is humbling. I feel like I've been talking about myself for too long.
You're amazing. Well, everybody, all those that this really truly resonate with you, definitely connect with Julie. Follow her on social media, listen to her podcast, join her in Africa, work with her. And we appreciate all you that are tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll see you in the next episode.